All right, so I'm starting the recording,
Yeah.
and yeah, we can get started. Um,
Yeah.
I'm happy to hang out afterward if we want to talk more about stories about India, but yeah, I guess we should get
Oh,
going.
wow.
Um,
Maybe I will come with the, we'll reach the face to face. Now you cannot see my face, right?
no, your camera's off.
Yeah, yeah. So maybe, after that we can, so we can see each other.
Sure.
Sure, no
Okay.
problem. Thank you. Jai Shri Krishna.
Jai Shri Krishna. Yeah. Okay. So we are in the next discourse, discourse 14 of book 1. On King Yudhishthira growing apprehensive at the sight of evil omens and Arjuna's return from Dwaraka. We had just learned in the last one that this was just after the end of Sri Krishna's avatarana on Earth and the very start of the Kali Yuga. So much that most of the people don't even know yet. It takes time for the news to spread. So Sutta continued. Arjuna had left for Dwaraka in order to see his relations and to know the doings of Sri Krishna of sacred renown. He, however, did not return from that place, even though many months had elapsed. In the meantime, Yudhishthira, the illustrious scion of Kuru, saw portents of a fearful nature. Time had taken a dreadful turn. The characteristics of the seasons had totally changed. People had taken to sinful ways of living, their heart possessed with anger, greed, and falsehood. Their dealings had become crooked. Even friendship was marred by deceitfulness. There were quarrels between parents and sons, relations and relations, brothers and brothers, and even between husbands and wives. At the approach of the Kali age, the nature of individuals was vitiated by evils like greed and so on, while omens boding the worst type of calamity appeared. Witnessing all this, King Yudhishthira spoke to his younger brother Bhima as follows. Arjuna was sent to Dwaraka to see our relations, as well as to find out what Sri Krishna of sacred renown was doing. Although 7 months have since elapsed, O Bhima Sena, I do not quite understand why your younger brother has not yet returned. May it not be that the time predicted by the celestial sage has arrived, when the Lord intends to cast off the form assumed by him for the sake of sport? The Lord to whose grace we owe our fortune, our kingdom, our spouses, our life, the continuance of our race, our progeny, our victory over enemies, and our title to the higher worlds. Observe the fearful portents, O tiger among men, in the heavens as well as on the earth, as also in our own person, boding some calamity near at hand, that will distract our mind. My left thigh, left eye, and left arm, dear brother, are throbbing again and again, and my heart quakes every now and then. All these will surely bring some unhappy news. Lo, the she-jackal, vomiting fire, howls at the rising sun, and this dog, dear Bhima, fearlessly bays at me. Good animals, such as the cow, pass by to my left, while inauspicious animals, such as the donkey, pass by my right. This is talking about different traditional omens. I see my horses weeping, O tiger among men. This dove, the harbinger of death, as well as the owl and its enemy the crow, keeping awake all the night, make my heart shudder with their horrible cries, and would have the world converted into a desert. The quarters look smoky. The orbs of the sun and the moon appear with a misty halo encircling them. The earth with the mountains quakes every now and then. And there are frequent thunderclaps accompanied by violent lightning strokes, dear brother. The wind blows very hard, spreading darkness with dust. The clouds rain blood, creating a ghastly scene everywhere. Look at the sun, which has lost its brilliance, and the planets contending against one another in the heavens, meaning that the astrology is extremely inauspicious. There was an actual astrological conjunction to mark the very beginning of Kali Yuga. That's traditionally how people date. Ancient Indian astrological writers like Aryabhata and the writers of the Surya Siddhanta date the Kali Yuga because Over the meridian of Ujjain in India, Rahu was directly above, and all of the other grahas were simultaneously debilitated. So that's what he's referring to, that the astrology is intensely inauspicious. The heaven and the earth seemed to be set on fire due to multitudes of ghosts and other creatures congregating here and there. Streams and big rivers, no less than lakes and mines, are all agitated. The fire does not burn even with clarified butter. I wonder what surprise is this fateful time going to spring on us. Calves refuse to suck the udders, and their mothers do not allow themselves to be milked. Cows weep, tears trickling down their faces, while bulls too do not rejoice with the herd. The images of gods appear to weep, nay, they perspire and move from their seats. These outlying districts and villages, cities and gardens, mines and hermitages look cheerless and robbed of their splendor. God knows what evil this portends for us. From these grave forebodings, I am led to believe that the earth has undoubtedly lost its charm, having been deprived of the touch of the Lord's feet that possess a grace unknown to the feet of any other person. As the king was thus expressing his concern with a heart full of anxiety at the sight of these portentous phenomena, O Shaunaka, Arjuna, whose banner was emblazoned with the figure of a monkey, the monkey Hanuman, returned from Dwaraka, the capital of the Yadus. Seeing his younger brother fallen at his feet with a strange look about him, lackluster and ill at ease, his face cast down and tears trickling down from his lotus-like eyes, the king felt anxious at heart and questioned him in the midst of his other kinsmen, recalling the words of Narada. Yudhishthira said, "Are our relations, the Madhus, the Bhojas, the Dasharhas, the Arhas, the Satvatas, the Andhakas, and the Vrishnis happy in Dwaraka, the capital of the Anartas? Is my revered maternal grandfather Shura," that's a kind of a short nickname for Shurasena, "doing well? And are our maternal uncles Anakadundhubi, that's Vasudeva, Krishna's father, and his younger brother enjoying good health? Again, are our maternal aunts, the 7 wives of Vasudeva, Devaki, and others, who are related to one another as sisters, quite hail themselves as also their sons and daughters-in-law? Does King Ahuka," another name of Ugrasena, so Krishna was kind of in practice the king of Dwaraka, but he never officially took the throne. Officially, the Raja of the Yadavas and of Dwaraka was still Ugrasena, or Ahuka, whose son Kamsa was notorious for his wickedness, and his younger brother Devaka, still alive, and are Hridika and his son Kritavarma, Akrura, a cousin of Vasudeva, Jayanta, Gada, and Sarana, Sri Krishna's brothers, as well as Shatrajit and others faring well, and the divine Sri Rama, that's Balarama, Krishna's brother, the lord of the Sattvatas, happy, is Pradyumna, Krishna's eldest son, the greatest warrior among all the Vrishnis, well, and is the divine Aniruddha, that's Pradyumna's son, Krishna's grandson, of marvelous dash on the field of battle, prospering. Sushena and Chadureshna, those are 2 more of Krishna's sons, and Samba, born of Jambavati. So some of these sons of Krishna we've mentioned, Pradyumna, Sushena, Chadureshna, these are sons of Krishna's first wife, Rukmini. Samba is the eldest of Krishna's sons, born of one of his other wives, Jambavati. Later on in one of the later books, I think in book 10, 10, it lists all of Krishna's children. There's a lot of them. And all the other great sons of Sri Krishna, including Rishabha, as also their sons. And even so, Sruta Deva, Udhava, and the other attendants of Sri Krishna and other principal Sattvatas, Sunanda and Nanda being the chief of them, are all these doing well, protected by the arms of Sri Rama and Sri Krishna? Do they ever inquire after our welfare, bound as they are by ties of affection to us? And is Lord Govinda, a friend of the Brahmanas and full of affection for his devotees, happy in his famous council chamber, Sudharma? Sudharma is the name of the council chamber, or the kind of like public assembly hall in Dvaraka. at his own capital in the midst of his kith and kin. It is for the protection and prosperity and well-being of all the worlds that the prime person is living in the milk ocean of the Yadava race with his constant companion, Lord Ananta. This is because Balarama is an avatar of Ananta Sheshanaga, the serpent of Vishnu. Respected by all, the Yadus revel like the attendants of Lord Vishnu in their own city of Dvaraka, protected by his long arms. By virtue of their service to his feet, which they regard as their foremost duty, Satyabhama and the other 16,000 and odd spouses of the Lord prevailed on this latter, on the Lord, to conquer gods on the field of battle and carried by force the objects of sense enjoyment, such as the celestial Parijata tree sought by the gods themselves and fit to be enjoyed by goddess Shakti, the spouse of Indra. Nay, the great Yadava warriors, who depend on the might of his stout arms, always fearlessly tread the council chamber known by the name of Sudharma, which was snatched by force from Indra and was worthy of the foremost gods. Are you yourself enjoying good health, dear Arjuna? You seem to have lost the brightness of your countenance. Did you fail to receive proper attention, or were you ever treated with disrespect during your prolonged stay, dear brother? I hope no one tormented you with words, etc., devoid of love and full of inauspicious import. Did you ever fail to grant the prayer of suppliants who approached you with some hope, or to give something which you might have promised of your own accord? I hope you never turned away any Brahmana, child, cow, aged or ailing man, any woman, or any creature whatsoever that might have approached you for protection, noted as you are for affording shelter. I am sure you never shared the bed of a woman unworthy of you, nor did you copulate flippantly with a woman worthy of you. I further hope that you were not vanquished while on your way back by your equals nor by your inferiors. Did you ever take your meals ignoring the aged or children deserving to be fed? Or did you perpetrate any loathsome act which was unbecoming of you? This is all he's kind of guessing at reasons why Arjuna might be upset. Or is it that you have been torn from your ever most beloved and intimate friend and relation, and thus consider yourself desolate? For there can be no other cause of your agony. Next discourse. Sutta continued. Sri Krishna's friend, Arjuna, also nicknamed as Krishna. So probably what happened is that the Sanskrit text here used the name Krishna to refer to Arjuna. Krishna literally just, one of the meanings of Krishna is just dark-skinned. And since Arjuna was very dark-skinned, it's a nickname referring to the beauty of their skin. Who had grown lean and thin on account of his separation from Sri Krishna, was stormed with a number of questions by his elder brother King Yudhishthira, since his gloomy appearance gave rise to many a doubt. His lotus-like face and heart were withering with grief and his brightness gone, and wholly engrossed in the thought of that very Lord, he could not make any answer. Overwhelmed with anxiety caused by love that had swelled due to the disappearance of the Lord, and recalling the friendliness, beneficence, and goodwill shown by him while playing the role of a charioteer, and so on, he managed with difficulty to restrain his tears within his eyes, and wiped with his hands those tears that had trickled down his cheeks. And in a voice choked with tears, he addressed his elder brother, King Yudhishthira, as follows. Arjuna said, I have been deceived, O great king, by Sri Hari, who appeared in the form of a friend in relation to me and who has now robbed me of my mighty valor, which was once the wonder even of gods. At a moment's separation from him, the world presents a loathsome sight, even as this body is called dead when bereft of life. Through his might, I was able, on the occasion of the self-election of a husband by Draupadi, to outshine the princes that had assembled at the house of King Drupada, intoxicated with love, to hit the revolving fish hanging from a roof as a target, after duly fitting the bow with an arrow, and in this way to win the hand of Krishna, Draupadi. In his, Krishna's, presence, I speedily conquered Indra and his heavenly hosts, offered the Khandava forest to the god of fire, and secured the council chamber built by the demon Maya, which was of wonderful workmanship and full of conjuring devices. And tributary chiefs bought presents from every quarter during your Rajasuya sacrifice. It was by his might that the revered Bhimasena, possessing as he does the strength and vigor of 10,000 elephants, succeeded in slaying Jarasandha, who was haughty enough to set his foot on the heads of vanquished kings in order to accomplish the Rajasuya sacrifice. Nay, it was he who set free a number of princes that had been made captive and brought by Jarasandha to his capital for being sacrificed to the god Mahabhairava, and who in return brought presents for your sacrifice. When your wife Draupadi fell at his feet with tears rolling down her cheeks and loosing her lovely braid, which, though rendered most sacred and praiseworthy by being sprinkled with holy water during the Rajasuya sacrifice, had been roughly handled by miscreants like Dushasana and others in open court, he requited the wrong done to her by widowing their own wives and thereby compelling the latter to lose their hair. Nay, it was he who saved us from a terrible pitfall contrived by our enemy Duryodhana through the sage Durvasa, who took his meals ahead in the company of not less than 10,000 pupils by going to the forest and accepting a stray remnant of some vegetable stuff left in Draupadi's kettle. By his doing so, the whole host of students that had accompanied Durvasa, while yet immersed in water for their ablutions and prayers, felt as if all the three worlds had been surfeited. This refers to kind of a long story in the Mahabharata. There's a footnote if anyone's following in the book, but it's kind of long and it's kind of beside the point. So I'm going to just keep going in the main Bhagavatam. Again, it was by his might that I astonished with my valor in a single combat Lord Shankara, no less than his spouse, goddess Girija, the former of whom was pleased to impart to me because he was so pleased with Arjuna's prowess his own missile, the Pashupatastra, as also did the guardian of every other quarter, the 8 Lokapalas, the gods of the directions. Nay, in this very body I shared with the mighty Indra the exalted throne in his court. While I was enjoying a holiday in that celestial abode, Indra and the other gods sought the help of my powerful arms, which bore the celebrated Gandiva bow, and owed their strength to him for the destruction of their enemies, the Nivata Kavachas, O Yudhishthira. Alas, by that supreme person I stand cheated today. Befriended by him, I was able to cross on a chariot all alone the boundless and unfathomable ocean of the Kaurava host, which was rendered further impassable by formidable aquatic creatures. This is referencing Bhishma, Drona, and others. It's a kind of a complicated reference why they're symbolized by aquatic creatures. Again, it was with his help that I not only recovered from the hands of our enemies the abundant wealth, the cattle of King Virata, but was also able to snatch from their heads their glorious turbans as well as the precious stones from their diadems. Keeping in front of me as a charioteer, as I stood face to face with the armies led by Bhishma, Drona, Karna, and Shalya, and adorned with the chariots of a host of Kshatriya chiefs, my lord, he stole away by his very look the lifespan, the heart, as well as the strength and vigor of the great car warriors, that's chariot-mounted archers, who commanded the various troops. Securely placed as I was in his arms, the missiles of unfailing power hurled at me by my preceptor, Drona, Bhishma, Karna, Bhurishrava, the grandson of Bahlika, Susharma, the king of the Trigartas, Shalya, Jayadratha, the king of the Sindhus, and Bahlika, the younger brother of Shantanu, and others did not even touch my person, any more did the weapons of the demons, did Prahlada. That's referencing a whole other story, which I believe is told later in the Bhagavatam. Stupid as I was, I chose for my charioteer the Lord whose lotus feet are adored by noble souls for exemption from birth and death, and who surrenders to his devotees his very self. Dazzled by his glory, great car warriors who were arrayed against me could not strike at me, even though I stood on the ground, my horses being exhausted. The jokes of Lord Madhava brightened with his hearty and charming smiles, and his captivating manner of addressing me as son of Prita, Arjuna, beloved companion and delight of the Kurus, stir my heart to its very depth, O ruler of men, even as I call them to mind. Since we treated each other on an equal footing while in bed or sitting together, while rambling or indulging in self-praise, or even at dinner and so on, I occasionally twitted him and said, "Friend, you are indeed a voracious man." Yet in his unlimited greatness, that exalted soul put up with all my faults, fool as I was, even as a friend would bear with his friend or a father with his own son. Bereft of that supreme person, who was my beloved companion and friend, O suzerain Lord, I am left without a heart. That is why, while escorting the Lord's spouses on the way, dear brother, I was vanquished like a woman by the wicked cowherds. The same indeed is my Gandiva bow, and the same my shafts, meaning they were vanquished because Arjuna was so dispirited that he couldn't muster his fighting spirit. The same my chariot, and drawn by the same horses. Nay, I am the same car warrior before whom monarchs bowed their head. Bereft of the Lord, however, all these were reduced to nothingness in a moment, like an oblation poured into ashes, service done with some covert motive, and the seed sown in a barren land. O king, as regards our relations at Dwaraka, about whom you have made inquiries just now, they all lost their reason under the influence of a curse pronounced by the Brahmanas, and drank wine, and their mind having been thrown completely off the balance through revelry, they struck one another with their fists like strangers and perished, with the exception of only 4 or 5 out of thousands. In fact, it is a diversion of the Almighty Lord that living beings now kill one another and now foster one another. Even as in water, O king, the larger among the aquatic creatures devour the smaller ones, the stronger consume the weaker, and the larger and the stronger ones eat up one another. Even so, the Lord caused the other powerful princes to be exterminated by the mighty and most powerful Yadus, and had the Yadus killed by the Yadus themselves, since they had now grown to be a burden to the earth. The words of Lord Govinda, appropriate as they were to the place and occasion of the talk and pertinent to the subject at hand, and soothed the agony of the heart, ravished my soul even as I call them to mind. Sutta said, as Jishnu, that's the name of Arjuna, was thus contemplating on Sri Krishna's lotus feet with most intense devotion, his mind became tranquil and free from passion. All the impurities of his mind, lust, anger, and so on, having been wiped out by devotion that had grown in intensity through contemplation on the feet of Lord Vasudeva, he now recollected the gospel which, though preached by the Lord in the battlefront, had been forgotten through mental obscurity occasioned by lapse of time and intense worldly activity. That's, of course, referring to the Bhagavad Gita. The veil of Maya having been withdrawn from him through the realization of Brahma, Arjuna transcended the 3 gunas. His illusion in the shape of duality was fully resolved. His astral body was dissolved. That means his karmas and the subtle koshas of his self. It's referencing a whole model of the subtle body that's laid out in the Taittiriya Upanishad. And he was finally rid of sorrow and secured immunity from transmigration. In other words, he gained moksha and is not going to have to take birth again. Hearing of the Lord's departure from the earth and the extermination of the race of Yadu, Yudhishthira, whose mind was now completely set at rest, resolved to ascend to heaven. When Prita, the mother of the Pandavas, heard from Yudhishthira of the destruction of the Yadus and the Lord's mysterious departure as told by Arjuna, she fixed her mind with exclusive devotion on Lord Adhokshaja, Sri Krishna, and turned her back on this world consisting of birth and death. Lord Sri Krishna, who is ever free from birth and death, cast off in the eyes of the world the very body with which he had relieved the earth's burden, just as a man throws away the thorn with which he has extracted another thorn. For both were equal in the eyes of the Lord. Even as the Lord, like an actor, assumes and then drops the forms of a fish, etc., so did he shuffle off the body with which he had removed the earth's burden. When Lord Sri Krishna, the bestower of liberation, bodily departed from this earth, leaving behind his stories, which are charming to the ear, that very day entered the Kali age, which leads men of unawakened consciousness to unrighteousness. The wise king Yudhishthira saw the growth of vices like greed, falsehood, deceit, and violence, etc., not only in the city of Hastinapura, but in the whole of his state, nay, in every home, as well as in the mind of the people. And concluding therefrom the advance of the Kali age, prepared to depart from this world. At Hastinapura, the emperor installed his grandson Parikshit, who was not meaning installed as Raja in his place, who was not only well disciplined, but was his own compeer in virtues, as this meaning no one else was as virtuous as him. As the sovereign of the ocean-girdled earth, while at Mathura he enthroned Vajra, the son of Aniruddha, and the only surviving member of Sri Krishna's family, as the lord of the Shurasenas. Then, having offered a sacrifice to Prajapati, that's a form of Brahma, Yudhishthira, who had mastered his self, received the sacred fires into himself. This is an old Vedic saying. To receive the sacred fires into yourself mean that you end all householder dharma, because the household fire is a symbol of the household dharma, that you always tend the fire. To receive it into yourself means that you're leaving your home forever. You internalize the household fire by taking sannyas and tend only the fire in your own heart. Leaving at the palace his fine clothes, bangles, and all, he renounced the feelings of I and mine and completely severed all his worldly ties. He mentally merged his speech into mind, the mind into prana, the prana into the apana with its function into mrityu, into death, and merged mrityu into his body, made up of the 5 elements. So this is kind of a complex series of metaphysics. What it's referring to is the series of rituals involved in taking sannyas, the formal process of taking a vow of sannyas. Thus, realizing his body as nothing but death, the royal sage Yudhishthira merged his body into the 3 gunas. These 3 gunas, again, he merged into the one fundamental prakriti. This prakriti, which is the universal cause, he merged into the jiva, and the jiva into the imperishable Brahman. Clad in rags and abstaining from food and drink, he took a vow of complete silence, flung about his hair in a disorderly way, and exhibited himself like a dullard or a madman or a fiend. Waiting for none and hearing nothing like a deaf man, he came out of the palace, and contemplating in his heart on the supreme Brahman, he took the path towards the north, a path trodden by exalted souls even in the past, and treading which one does not return. Finding the people on earth in the grip of the Kali age, the promoter of unrighteousness, all his brothers, too, followed him with a similar resolve to attain the divine abode. Having fully achieved all the ends of life, and knowing the lotus feet of Lord Vaikunta as their eternal abode, they clung to them with their mind. Their intellect being purified by devotion that had grown in intensity through meditation on those feet, their mind was exclusively fixed on the supreme reality of Bhagavan Narayana, which is the abode of only those who are purged of all sin. With that pure mind, they attained that goal which is difficult of attainment for the wicked and sensually minded. Vidura, too, whose mind was fully controlled and possessed by Sri Krishna, cast off his body at Prabhasa, near Dwaraka. And with his thought fixed on Sri Krishna, he returned to his abode, the realm of Yama, accompanied by the mains, the souls of the ancestors who had called him there to take him back, since he was an avatar of Yamaraja. Draupadi also, when she came to know of her lord's indifference to the world, meaning her husband's indifference to the world, concentrated her mind on the divine Sri Krishna, the son of Vasudeva, and attained to him. He who listens with reverence to this most sacred and blessed story of the departure in this manner of Pandu's sons, the beloved of the Lord, develops devotion to Sri Hari and attains perfection. And we are on to Discourse 16 on the conquest of the world by King Parikshit and a dialogue between Dharma and Mother Earth. Dharma, the Deva, personified. Sutta continued. After the ascent of the Pandavas to heaven, King Parikshit, who was a great devotee of the Lord, ruled over the earth according to the instructions of the foremost Brahmanas. He possessed, O Shaunaka, the same noble virtues as had been predicted by expert astrologers at the time of his birth. He married Iravati, the daughter of Uttara, his own maternal uncle, and begot through her 4 sons, Janamejaya and others. Taking Kripa, the son of Sharadvan, for his guru, he performed on the bank of the Ganga 3 Ashvamedhas, offering liberal sacrificial fees. To perform an Ashvamedha on the bank of the Ganga, of course, the Ashvamedha takes a year and wanders all over. To perform it on the bank of the Ganga means that's where the start and end portion of the ceremony were performed. In these sacrifices, the gods accepted the offerings before the eyes of all, like manifested in person visibly. Somewhere in the course of his conquest of the world during those Ashvamedhas, the hero caught and subdued by his superior might the spirit of the Kali age, the demon Kali himself, who in the form of a Shudra was disguised as a prince, striking with his foot a cow, and a bull. I'm going to pause there because we've got to reset the Zoom. So I'm going to close out and wait just a minute and then join by the same link and we will keep going.